This is Jordan. This video is being recorded on Friday, August 11th, 2023. Thank you so much for tuning in. In this video, I'm going to talk about why bulls and buyers are needed for a gold bull market. Now, it's kind of master the obvious, but I do want to look at some charts here to kind of illustrate the point that I'm getting across. And it kind of focuses on sentiment a little bit. I got, let's see here, 4 charts, so I want to run through these quickly without droning on. But first, so this is the capital raised from the CDNX or the TSX venture, and you can see the blue bars show the capital raised each year at the very end of the year, of course. And so here we are through the end of May, so nearly half of the year, and this is coming in. It looks a lot like 2015. So very little capital is being raised in the juniors. And I think I mentioned something about this, looking at how there's a lot of similarities between today and 02 and 03. So maybe you can do another video focusing on that. But, you know, this is just, I mean, it is kind of a sentiment indicator. It's not perfectly objective, but it just shows you the sentiment in the junior space right now. So moving on, we'll get into more hardcore sentiment indicators, if you will, and to just kind of show that, I mean, there's just a real lack of bullishness and optimism in the market. And so this shows the outstanding shares of GLD. And so when there's more funds, there's more buying of the GLD, more money moving into that, the GLD increases the number of shares. So this looks very similar to a fund flow chart, you know, nearly identical. And so here we are. And interestingly, you know, the gold's been consolidating like this, but, you know, the trend in GLD in the shares or the fund flows has been down like that. And interestingly, I mean, this is where we are here. This is pretty close to a 3-year low. And, you know, obviously the price has come back. It's, you know, testing 1900. Maybe it breaks it. But this clearly shows you, I mean, there's a lack of interest and bullish sentiment in the market. Actually very similar to what happened here in the spring of 2019, where interestingly, you know, the number of shares here was pretty close to a 3-year low. So very similar here. And obviously, I mean, this was a real cyclical bull here, 2018 to 2020. And I'll show this in another chart, but boom, you can see the huge increase in buying of the GLD. And so, I mean, look, it's master of the obvious, but there's no buying of the GLD. So even though gold is holding up well, to really break out here, you're going to need a lot of buying that comes into the market, and therefore a huge increase in bullish sentiment. And so it's interesting because when you start a new bull market, I mean, you see this in the stock market as well. When you start a new bull market, you know, after a bear market or a severe correction, you tend to see, I mean, bullish sentiment can kind of be a confirming indicator of that. So you have to be careful about being too contrarian when it comes to sentiment. You know, this is another example here. I mean, generally, you know, we like to see that. I want to see the story count here rather than here when gold hasn't broken out yet. You know, again, some similarities to early 2019. But, you know, this is the interest has really come down here, obviously, compared to where it was at these peaks. So, again, master of the obvious here, but you know, for gold to break out and go like this, you're going to need to see a lot more interest in the market, a lot more bulls, and a lot more stories about gold. And here's the last thing I think to, you know, hopefully best illustrate my point here. This is the gold optic. So they used to call it public opinion at Sentiment Trader. I mean, there's the market vein. There's a lot of these surveys, but you know, there are for these indicators, there are differences when you're in a bull market and a bear market versus, you know, maybe something in between, like we've kind of been for the past couple years. And we can see here, this is a clear bull market for gold, obviously. And the sentiment here, you know, this line is 80. It's 80 right here. It's 80. And so, the percentage in a bull market, you tend to get really bullish sentiment. Again, master of the obvious. But, this is important because it gives us an example of what should happen or what will happen with sentiment in a bull market versus when it's not really in a bull market. 2016, look, sentiment didn't get above 80. However, 2018 to 2020, or you can say, early 2019 through August 2020, you can see here sentiment, public opinion was going above, or the optics was going above 80% bulls. So similar to this, a cyclical bull market. But, gold struggling to break through in the last year or so, that the Russian invasion and all that, bullish sentiment peaked just barely above 70. And even recently, sentiment couldn't even come close to 70. Another thing I noticed, I could have mentioned this, but this is back, early 2000. Now, gold bottomed. This bottom here, I think, was 2001. So after 2000, when gold had a bit of a spike, you can see the sentiment here did not go up to 80. Just another example. But back to the present. So, yes, in a sense, you could say, wow, this is great. Gold's holding up really well. Bullish consolidation. There's sentiment. There's not that many people who care about it. Yes, all that is true. But again, if you're going to see, or if and when you see gold go like this and make that huge move higher, you're going to need to see bullish sentiment shoot higher into the 80s here. And it's the same thing with the COT, because every time, gold has gotten ready to break out, or it makes a breakout, there's always some people are saying, oh, the COT, it looks bearish, there's too many speculators. That is incorrect analysis, because it's actually, when you're breaking out after a long bear market, an increase in speculation, an increase in bullish sentiment is what you want to see. That is, again, it's like confirmation of a new bull move or a new bull market. And so we are far from that in terms of sentiment at this point. So on the one hand, it's great that, sentiment is, not that bullish. If we're looking from a big picture, contrary perspective, yeah, great. Nobody cares about gold. It's held up well. Sentiment is really bearish. Nobody cares. But at the end of the day, you're going to need to see a lot more buying coming in. Obviously we need to see a change in fundamentals, be it, inflation now starting to tick up again. Maybe it's going to be that. Maybe it's going to be the recession likely to come next year and rate cuts. So, maybe it's both those things. Maybe it's a combination, but you get a fundamental change and you see a lot of buying coming in this market. You'll see sentiment. You'll see these surveys, these indicators, sentiment will really, really get bullish. That's not bearish. That actually tells you a new bull market is starting. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let me know what you think. Talk to you guys again in the next video.